When most people hear the name Mansa Musa, they usually hear one thing right away: the richest man who ever lived. Richer than kings, richer than emperors, richer than modern billionaires. Elon and Jeff Bezos would be jealous. How does somebody become unimaginably rich in ancient times in the middle of the Sahara Desert of all places? Because when most of us picture the Sahara, we picture sand, heat, and emptiness, not global trade, massive wealth, and one of the most powerful rulers of the medieval world. But that's exactly where this story begins. Let's dig in. To understand Mansa Musa, you first have to understand West Africa before Mali. Long before Mali rose to power, there was another powerful kingdom in that region called Ghana. Not the modern country of Ghana, but an earlier empire that controlled some of the richest gold fields in the world. Gold was everywhere in West Africa. But here's the thing. The people who controlled the gold didn't want outsiders anywhere near the mines. Can you blame them? If you have the gold and everyone else wants the gold, maybe don't hand out directions to the gold. So they came up with a system historians call silent barter. Here's how it worked. Traders from far away, North Africa, the Mediterranean world, would arrive and leave goods like salt, cloth, or metal tools at a trading site. Then they'd step back. Local traders later would come in and leave gold in exchange. No talking, no negotiation, no direct contact. Now, at first that sounds kind of crazy, but I just can't walk into Walmart, grab a TV, leave what I think is worth on a shelf, and walk out. I don't recommend trying that. But silent barter wasn't random. It was built on trust and reputation. It was actually closer to something we do all the time today. Think eBay. I can buy something from someone I've never met in a place I've never been. I don't hand them cash. I don't know them personally. I click a button, send money digitally, and trust that a stranger is going to send me what I paid for. And most of the time, it works. Silent barter was kind of like that, an early system where both sides understood the rules. If the gold wasn't enough, the traders walked away. If it was fair, the deal stood. No arguing, no haggling, no let me speak to your manager. Just a situation where everyone was on the same page and knew the rules. Although they traded many items for gold, salt may have been one of the most important. Why? Here's how I explain this to my students. Ever get your tears or sweat into your mouth? They're salty. That's your body reminding you that it needs salt. Salt helps your muscles work, keeps your nerves firing, and regulates fluids in your body. Without it, people get weak, sick, and eventually can't survive. So salt was always something people had to find. Today, there's a salt shaker on every table, so we don't think twice about it. But back in the ancient and medieval world, salt could be hard to get, especially in a hot climate where people were sweating constantly. It was so valuable that Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt, or at least given money connected to buying salt. The Latin word for salt is sal, which is where we get the word salary. See what I mean? Salt was kind of a big deal. With that in mind, trading gold for salt suddenly makes a whole lot more sense. Speaking of gold, the kings of Ghana were smart about how they managed it. They kept gold nuggets for themselves, while allowing everyday trade to take place using gold dust. What if it blew away? That helped control inflation and kept gold valuable. Basically, they understood something people still struggle with today. If too much money floods the system, the money starts losing value. Sounds familiar. This system made Ghana rich, and it helped set the stage for what came next. Now let's talk about the Sahara itself, because this is where the story gets really interesting. The Sahara wasn't just a desert, it was a wall, a massive, deadly, sun-baked wall that kept people apart, and crossing it wasn't easy. Trade moved across the desert in camel caravans, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of camels long. These caravans traveled from oasis to oasis following routes that had been mapped out over generations. And this was not we'll just figure it out when we get there situation. Get yourself lost and miss an oasis, and that wasn't an inconvenience, that was the end. Camels made this possible. They could store water, carry heavy loads, and survive long stretches without rest. Without camels, trans-Saharan trade doesn't happen at all. And what were they carrying? Gold going north and salt coming south. Also, slaves, cloth, ivory, and later books. So West Africa wasn't isolated. It was connected, deeply connected to the whole world. Well, at least the world they knew. But that world didn't stay the same forever. The old Ghana Empire eventually fell apart, not because it suddenly ran out of gold, but because trade routes shifted. As new routes developed further south, Ghana slowly lost control over the movement of trade that had made it powerful in the first place. There were also issues from within the empire, power struggles, outside attacks, and big changes in religion and trade. In other words, Ghana didn't just wake up one day and say, well, that was fun, empire over. Over time, Ghana faded in a long, gradual loss of power and influence. And in that power vacuum, a new kingdom began to rise. That kingdom was Mali. Mali didn't just replace Ghana, it adapted. It took advantage of newer trade routes, expanded farther south, and built its power around controlling movement instead of just location. This is the world Mali inherited. Mali didn't just sit on gold, it controlled trade routes, and that's where Mansa Musa comes in. Mansa Musa ruled Mali in the early 1300s, and his wealth didn't come from digging gold out of the ground itself. It came from something much smarter. He controlled the gold fields, the caravan routes, and the taxes on trade. If you wanted to move gold, salt, or goods through Mali, you paid the king. That's how Mansa Musa became wealthy on a scale that's honestly hard to even measure. Mansa Musa was also a Muslim, and that's important, but maybe not in the way people often think. Islam wasn't just a religion. It was also a shared cultural and economic network, and that was a big deal, even in regions where not everyone was a Muslim. Think of it like this. If merchants share a language, share ideas about how the world is supposed to work, and share basic rules for doing business, trade gets a whole lot easier. Living in a mostly Muslim region meant shared laws, shared language, and shared ideas about war, trade, and how to live the life. Trust was a big deal. And that network stretched from West Africa across North Africa into Spain, the Middle East, India, and even China. That meant access to new ideas, technologies, and knowledge, not just things people traded. And then came the moment that made Mansa Musa famous across the world. In 1324, he went on the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And let's just say, he didn't sneak out quietly with a backpack and a granola bar. He traveled with thousands of followers and enormous amounts of gold. Along the way, he gave away so much gold in places like Cairo, Egypt, that he actually crashed the local economy. Gold lost its value for years, and people remembered that. Because if one guy shows up and gives away so much gold that prices change, people are going to talk. European mapmakers soon started drawing Africa differently, with a crowned king holding a piece of gold. Africa wasn't just some place anymore. It was a powerful place that meant something. But here's the part I really like. Mansa Musa didn't just bring back gold to Mali. He brought back scholars, architects, and books. Cities like Timbuktu became centers of learning, connected to a wider Islamic world of great thinkers who kept and expanded on Greek, Roman, and Indian knowledge, going way back. Now get this. For a long time, at least here in the US, people used the word Timbuktu to mean the middle of nowhere. I had to drive all the way out to Timbuktu to pick up that used treadmill I bought on Facebook. Not exactly an expression that kids use today, but the older and wiser among us remember it. The funny thing is, Timbuktu was the exact opposite of that. Timbuktu was a major city filled with wealthy, educated, and internationally connected people. It had universities, libraries, and scholars studying law, math, astronomy, and theology. Manuscripts were copied, debated, and kept there for generations. So while we use Timbuktu like it means way out there in the sticks, back then it was more like saying, I'm heading to a major center of learning. Places like Alexandria and Baghdad are probably more familiar to us as famous centers of learning. Timbuktu did its best to be up there with them. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad, for example, was a place where scholars translated and built on earlier ideas in math, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. A lot of that knowledge traced its roots back to the Greek world, spread centuries earlier by Alexander the Great and empires that followed him. Even after those regions later came under Muslim rule, the ideas didn't disappear. They were studied, preserved, translated, and expanded. This wasn't about replacing earlier civilizations, it was about building on them, standing on the shoulders of giants. And Mansa Musa benefited from that world. So who was Mansa Musa really? He wasn't just rich. He ruled a kingdom built on geography, trade, smart rule, and connecting to a global network. He lived in a world where caravans crossed deadly deserts, where gold and salt were lifelines, and where ideas traveled just as far as stuff people traded. And that's why the story still matters. Because Mansa Musa's wealth didn't come from magic or legend. It came from understanding how the world actually worked. And that might be the best part. Not just that he had gold, but that he understood the world gold moved through. This is Have to Know History. History you just have to know. Thanks for being here.